And we are recording. Hi, everybody. This is David P. France, and I'm coming to you from Basel, Switzerland. Before we get started with this interview, I'd like everyone out there watching in social media land to like the video, subscribe to our YouTube and BitChute channels, and also tell your friends and your family about what we're doing. We're a platform, and we are showcasing artists, inventors, thought leaders, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. At least that's what we're doing now. And this is David P. France TV. Today or tonight, I'm speaking with someone who I met, and I'm just going to be frank because sometimes people want to know, via LinkedIn. And I think at the moment we're in this sort of weird situation where no one can meet and no one can travel. So I think the social media is probably the best way to get to know people. I'm speaking today to Jamiel Laurence. He is based in, where are you in the UK? You're in Scotland right now, right?
I am in Glasgow, Scotland.
Yeah, in Glasgow. And he's a professional dancer, choreographer, filmmaker, and he's the founder of Fun Freelance Dance. And we're going to get to all of that just in a moment, right? So first I want to, ask you directly, just give us some of your background, what you've been doing, what you've been up to, and then we'll go right to Fun Freelance Dance.
Sure. Okay. So I grew up around the arts. My mother was a performing artist. I grew up in the ballet studio, in music rooms, and learning to dance, act, and sing. The lot, play music. I then formalized my training. But first I went to private boys' school, which was a very stressful experience for someone like me who kind of, seeks to be a maverick and do things in unusual ways. So yeah, first I went to the strictest school I could with a load of men only. Then I went to performing arts school. I went to Arts Educational School Tring, which is now called Tring Performing Arts, which is a boarding school up in Hertfordshire, just outside London. It's like the Hogwarts of arts, genuinely though, that sounds nuts. But while I was there, I also did lots of other trainings. So my mother really opened me up to taking information from multiple sources. I was an associate at the Royal Ballet. I was a music student at the Junior Conservatoire of Trinity College of Music, now Trinity Laban. I did my final classical ballet training at Central School of Ballet. And then I joined the Scottish Ballet, where I am a soloist to this day. That's the long history. In the immediate future and the immediate present, I am a filmmaker specializing in mobile filmmaking, which was a result of wanting to be a choreographer, but I couldn't get platformed. And we'll come back to being platformed, as you've mentioned already. So yeah, I'm a mobile filmmaker and choreographer. And I am the founder of Fun Freelance Dance, which just got t-shirts appearing for the first time formally on your podcast.
Yeah, well, look, well, congratulations to you. And also, thank you for, being, how do you say, savvy enough to present, on the platform. And we're going to get into that and why it's important to be able to, as they formally call it, brand yourself. Maybe that's too controversial. Promote yourself. Maybe that's too controversial. But
well, I think the thing there is obviously you said brand yourself and promote yourself. And what was unusual about Fun Freelance Dance to my peers, to my colleagues, and to my immediate surrounding people is that this wasn't about me at all. This was about solving a problem, a real world problem that was a result of the pandemic. And out there are a lot of very proactive organizations coming up with plans for recovery, but there weren't many organizations that were coming up with a reactive strategy to deal with the situation for the everyday freelance dancer, a community which is shrinking and artists are leaving every day to go and work in Amazon, the gig economy with Uber, Deliveroo, things like this. So just in response to, branding myself, what I wanted to actually do was create something that eventually I could potentially step away from, because it needed to be an innovation that had far-reaching consequences for a wider community and not be a vehicle for one person to move themselves up in the world and then, shout loud and be heard.
Before you go on, let's be clear, when I say brand yourself, I don't mean literally yourself as Jamiel Laurence. I mean in terms of branding the organization or the concept or the idea, right? So this is all something that's just as important as branding yourself when you're out there as an artist. And you've explained it, wonderfully. I mean, I want people out there to be very clear, and we've had conversation about this before. It's not a one-man show. In the arts community or in any organization that requires multiple people, right? And you need a crew, you need people to make costumes, all these types of things. It's never a one-man show. And in order for that to even occur, the amount of effort that one man would have to do in order to make that happen is extraordinary. So tell us more
I
about
I did say all of that with a brand across my chest. So you do have a great point.
But tell us more. I mean, we're going to get it into a bit more. I mean, you said that there's a need that's involved. Clearly, we're in really challenging times. How are people perceiving this effort? Now, let's even dial back a bit. How long has it been since you founded the organization, and walk us through sort of the process of how you built it and how's it going right now?
Okay, so let me start by telling you what Fund Freelance Dance is for those that don't know. So Fund Freelance Dance is a crowdfunding initiative set up to get dance artists and their supporting artists and services back into the studio, return to their craft, and back working on paid engagements, which is a very important part of what we do. So back in lockdown last year, when it all happened, it all kicked off, I was in New York on tour, and I got to see firsthand that entire city go from, a pretty stable, like in the movies, New York, hustle and bustle. And then the masks started to appear towards the middle of the tour. We were there for about a week and a bit. And then at the end, I was on Broadway performing, nobody was watching. At that point, 20 people were about brave enough to come out. And the feeling at the time was that if Broadway closed down, then where we were performing, which was the Joyce Theatre, Joyce would close if Broadway closed. And of course, overnight after that had been said, the Broadway closed and so did the Joyce, and we were flown back. And for 3 weeks, I had COVID-19. Which hit me very hard, and only this January can I say that I'm no longer suffering the side effects. So rewind back to February, March last year, I got back and I had this terrible illness, and when I finally got back to fitness again, I returned to company life and what was our response to the pandemic, and I just found myself starting to ask questions about what, in this end of the world apocalypse scenario, which in my head, back then really was and thought still is. What did I want to be doing? What did I want to be saying? And how did I want to be feeling? And there was a week where every day I would return from work and get stuck in traffic for 20 minutes at these temporary lights. And I always feel like things happen for a reason. And on the 5th day of making this wrong turn again and forgetting to go the other way, I sat there in the traffic light and said, right, I need to use this time. I need to do something. I need to make something. Something needs to happen here. And that's when I came up with the idea. I just started to have a conversation with myself in my head. What's a real problem, a real world problem right now? And how could we fix it? And it was one of these things. I have a belief in ideas sort of being living things that enter us. And it really came to me pretty fully formed. And I've been reading a lot of white papers for technologies and other things because of interests I have. And I started to formalize what I was thinking on paper within an hour. And at the end of that hour, I called one of my biggest supporters and sponsors for my own personal films, John and Hilary Austin. And I said to them, this is my idea, and I really think it's going to make a tangible difference. And it was at that moment that I kind of committed that no matter what, I was going to raise, at that time, what I said would be £7,000. No matter what, whether it's from my funds, friends' funds helping me, I was going to make this happen. And they said to me, they said, look, this is a great idea. We will support you. We will underwrite this. We will make sure that this goes ahead. But you've got to go out there and convince people because this is not a personal project. Like you said, this is for the wider community. And out of that was the massive campaign of me recording myself in my living room initially, finding and choosing dancers by posting up this opportunity online, and having those dancers also record themselves in their living rooms, or one actually lives on a barge, so on a boat, and say, look, this is the situation. There is no help available to us. In some cases, you know, we missed the deadline to be classed as self-employed by, you know, in one case, 3 days. And that's an Olivier Award nominated dancer that couldn't get any kind of financial aid. Yeah. And so what you've got to understand is that alongside all of this happening, my career as an independent choreographer and filmmaker was suddenly on the ascension. Everything was locking down for live events. And for me, as someone that was recording dance and recording art forms, I was suddenly getting phone calls. Can you do this music video? Could you record a small promo for this? Could you choreograph something on mobile because it's an easier, you know, cheaper production format for this thing? And that, you know, that was as small as friends of mine right up to the BBC and music labels. And so finally, I had this opportunity to use these dancers that I'd always wanted to work with, these freelance dancers, previous colleagues or people I've heard about. And they were saying, sorry, Jamiel, I work at Amazon now and I don't have any time to get class in anymore because I can't afford it.
Sure.
Or I am doing the Zoom classes, but for instance, in one case, I live on a small barge. I can't even do the class in my home. The only work I can get is teaching, you know, live in the studio while we project it out and all that. So there was a need, is the general thing. And initially, thinking that things were going to unlock soon, my idea was, let's get a project where we bring not only dance artists, but also all the other essential things that I think should be in the studio, that those freelancers thought should be in the studio. So dance teacher, live musician for class, live musicians for creative processes, which is, you know, fairly unusual. A photographer, dance photographer, not only as an essential, but used in a new way in the studio. So choreographed in, given an opportunity to say, what would you like to capture? Not just stand at the front of the theatre and take pictures. Yeah, there was more. There was camera assistant. We had a lighting designer. The musician part was big because we had access to a Yamaha C333 grand piano. So we had some really great pianists in there. Our photographer, Victor, was also a concert pianist. So we, you know, I made this joke to someone that, you know, this guy could play us some Wagner on piano now if you want. And he said, you know, I said, no, here, have a listen. And he did, and that was wonderful. And we did this initial launch, and it was one of the most special, it has to be the most special creative process I've ever been involved in. Many of the dance artists that choreographed and worked as dance artists and worked as one as a musician as well as a dance artist, you know, they had experiences cross media that they hadn't had access to before in a paid situation. The statements I made in that launch were everyone in the room, apart from myself, was going to be a freelance paid artist. I was a volunteer. Everyone in that studio was going to be chosen for a reason and was going to have a real artistic say. Dance artists in 2020 at the time, 2021 now, are not just, you know, living in a box of coming out, dance, go back in the box. They can be musicians themselves, choreographers, they can be artists of all kinds, they can design, they can be in business, they could have ideas that were nothing to do with, you know, dance itself directly, but could enhance that. And all these great ideas that, you know, nobody's going to dispute are good ideas, they all started to come out. And then we went into a further lockdown. And so plans for the second series kind of got put on hold. And I wanted, as a reactive organisation, to say, look, we raised our funding target last time of £7,000. We are listening to the public because they're paying for this. We're listening to the freelancers artists because this is by freelancers for freelancers. I didn't just sit in a room and come up with it on my own. I then phoned up all the freelancers I knew and got them to then phone all the freelancers they knew to say, what do we think about Jamiel's idea? What works for us? And that's actually how the rates of pay were agreed, as an example, as well as the timetable for the day, things like this. And then, yeah, so then we moved into this second lockdown. And again, I cannot emphasize how positive it is to have proactive organizations and think tanks and you know, committees that come together to discuss what's the problem and what do we do in the future. But I wanted to be the person that was, you know, what do we do right now? Because in my opinion, there wasn't enough of that happening. And we seem to be the only one of our kind doing what we did with the creative sessions, but we also were very aware that, for instance, Studio Wayne McGregor was running this reset program, and Wayne really brought together a great set of teachers and those dancers that needed those classes, and he continues to evolve and elevate that platform. One thing that we talked about in the beginning was that if we failed, if Fun Freelance Dance was a disaster and somebody did it better, that was only going to be a win for the wider freelance dance community. So yeah, it wasn't an egoic process. It was a real community. These are the brass tacks facts. And, it's that end of the world scenario. So what I was saying about proactive organizations, we wanted to be reactive. And when we went into the second lockdown, I was like, we already lost so many people in the first lockdown from this sector. Even dancers who participated in the first series, at the end of that series, I'd say, so what's next? And they were like, nothing. There's no work, and there's no one hiring. And the best I can do is keep myself in shape, but that isn't going to keep a roof over my head.
Yeah.
So if the problem is, I don't have the money to keep a roof over my head, there's other organizations that can sort that out. But if the problem is I want to do class, but there's a financial barrier, that's where the crowdfunding initiative could step in. And so the #FreeClass initiative was born out of Clive Burton, who was a big supporter of the arts. He reviewed ballets for The Times, Ritz magazine, and many others, a big ballet pundit. When he died, 2 weeks after our final week in October of 2020, I didn't know him, but he said to his friends, listen, what this organization's doing is a good thing. Rather than, leave money to whoever, I'd like you to donate to Fun Freelance Dance. And they gave us the money to set up 1 week of free class, streamed from the Lantern Studio Theatre in London, our launch venue and sponsored venue. And it would be a free class for anybody that wanted to take part. It would create a job for, at the time, a dance teacher and also a class musician. So it also created paid jobs, and it fixed that problem. January comes in and things get... sorry.
Before you go on, I think, let me ask a more pointed question. Let's say I have no idea what's going on with the dance world. I'm someone who is oblivious to how dance works, right? And that's most of the public, right? Is there a way, or how would you explain to someone who has no idea what happens in the dance world? That we'll talk about the outsider, and then we'll talk about the person that's the insider, because the insider has certain information and they may be acting or not acting because they're insiders, right? Because they are used to seeing things a certain way. But if I'm someone who, let's say, is a business owner, or let's say like maybe a grocery store chain owner or something like this, where, on LinkedIn, as we talked about how we met, there are people always asking me for money on LinkedIn. They think I have money. I don't have money. How would you talk to somebody about dance and the arts and the way that the freelance labor part fits in, right?
Well, you've actually asked and answered the question that I was going to say, which is the first problem isn't even what would I say, but how do I get in front of them to say it? So the first thing was visibility. And you said you found me on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And those of you who have heard of us or have, made that decision to follow us will realize that I blanket post once to twice a day, huge issues with images, with links to donate, with links to all of it, explaining what every single piece of this initiative does. The original launch launched with day one, there was a detailed budget. This is where your money's going. This is what it does. I mean, you could ask me about individual parts, but as an example, class. Why are dancers doing class every day? Someone outside of dance might say, haven't they learned how to dance by now? If they've not done it by the pandemic, they should probably give up now. Class is an essential part of every dance artist movement diet. It's actually the training session for the day. The word class obviously has evolved out of the sort of heritage art forms of dance, ballet, the way we associate contemporary dance starting the day. But, warm up doesn't seem to just cut it. Class seems to really nail it, because we are improving our technique. It's always a journey with dance. You don't walk in one day and you've got it. That's the end of your career. If you feel that way, then maybe it is time to stop. You're always walking up the mountain, ascending that mountain, and learning new things as you go, whether it's more pirouettes, cleaner position, you name it in ballet. Contemporary, the same thing. You know, can I jump, spin in the air, land on my head without killing myself? Let's keep working on it. That's what class is. It's your fitness, it's your maintenance, it's the practice of your craft. So when I talk about returning artists to their craft, it's not just the creative process. 3 of the original 7 dancers hadn't been in the studio for about 12 weeks by the time we got to the launch.
Sure.
So that's an example. How do I explain these things? Well, I have to start using language that's cross-sector. I can't walk in and say tendu, plie, releve. I need to walk in and say, look, you know, to achieve optimum output of the media and production that comes out as a result of the creative work we're doing, we need to be inputting at the other end into well-being and maintenance. We need to be making sure that our dancers are healthy and well. That reduces injury. Reduced injury means less bumps and problems during the production process, and this guarantees us a result. I don't know what production that is. I just talked us through. It sounds awesome, but you know, that's examples. Another one I'm pushing at the moment is I'm really struggling to raise funds to cover a teacher for £75, but also a class musician for £75. Mostly because people don't, or I barely put 2 and 2 together till I saw my partner teaching that you can zoom in a musician to accompany a class. You know, they're not in the same room or maybe even the same country, but you can still achieve that essential artistic input into the creative session. Mm-hmm. And that's something I'm looking to reintroduce. How do I explain that to someone that doesn't understand that? Well, one thing that happened at the launch was footage. I've got footage of every pianist playing for the whole class, every teacher teaching the whole class, every dancer dancing the whole class. Even the person opening the venue, there's a video. Anything that happened needed to be documented. And I used those bits of footage and my own skill set as a filmmaker to make, you know, put together social media pieces, usually under a minute, to say, this is what it's for. And you can find all of those on the website at funfreelancedance.com, under strange titles sometimes, titles that dancers say, why is it called that? But people that aren't dance or aren't in the arts sector understand immediately. And creative circuit. Well, I say creative circuit because then they'll say which aspect of it is the circuit. We had a piano in one corner with 2 musicians. We had choreography in the other corner. We had photography in the other, and we had performance in the other. And it's a circuit, and it goes round and round and round. Mm. And if you still don't get it, I subtitle the videos with explainers as well. So I'm doing my best to translate what I can, leading us on to something very important, which is that for this fun freelance dance idea to work, and for the wider dance community and freelance arts community to survive, we need to be looking at funding outside of the circle. These ego-led platforms of, you know, do the Jamiel class and pay me €5 and it's for the, you can say you experience this level of class or whatever. And if we keep paying in, eventually that bubble is going to shrink and shrink and shrink. That's not a sustainable economic model. And the word sustainable is used so much in terms of, you know, the planet, climate change. It's a fashionable word to be saying, but what about sustainability within sectors? Because what are we trying to do right now? We're trying to sustain things as best we can the way they are without losing all these artists, losing all these performance opportunities, losing these knowledge. We're losing those that were ready to retire in 3 years' time because they'll say, I'll do it now. But yet we're gaining all these graduates that have no jobs to graduate to. The knowledge gap being lost right now, you cannot underestimate it and you can't overlook it. And I think people outside of dance understand that kind of terminology. You know, they're not interested in just watching some ballet. They want to hear that, look, we're losing knowledge. We're losing what makes this work.
Yeah, it's in my eyes, it's, and I think I've been doing this for years, but because it's always been about the arts, it's always been an issue for me to be able to get people to really understand the importance of funding these kinds of activities. And I talked to you before about how I moved to Switzerland. I organizing shows across from one of the biggest companies here. The thing is that people aren't, I guess, educated in the way that the arts could actually help their bottom line. So I think there's one thing that I want to touch on is that what I believe you're doing is you're literally creating something that's as you say, maintenance, or you're trying to actually fill a hole that this economy, which is sort of going down, you're trying to fill that hole. You're coming up with a model, right, so that people can continue to do at least in the minimum way, right, so that when things open back up, they haven't lost time, they haven't lost, right? So there's some smart people that understand that what you're up to is you're creating a structure, right? And the structure can be, it can morph, it can change. It's almost like, as you said, when we spoke earlier, it's like a startup, right? So there are a lot of people that understand the term startup, but in your way, and tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, the startup or the beginnings of this concept is to really fill a void that this particular health crisis has created. So that's the most important thing, or the takeaway that I see from your effort. Anything else that has to do with like the ego and the this and the that, like people feeling that you're taking credit, that has to be moved out in my eyes, because we really are at a point where this is extremely serious, right? And has dire consequences for not just individual careers, but the actual sector in and of itself, the arts sector. So, I mean, with that, me putting that out, is there a way that you can explain, let's say I come to you and I say, I'm going to give you this donation of 100 pounds, right? And break down where that 100 pounds is going to go, or how would that be used? Or maybe we could say, I have 5,000 pounds that I could give, right? Some extra lying around. Where and how would that money be used, right, in your organization? Right. And then the effect, right, of, let's say, okay, we're going to put 100 pounds here, then we're going to do 200 pounds there, right? Could you do an example in that way?
Well, so let's deal with the small amount and the larger amount, both amounts equally valuable. So the small amount right now comes in tomorrow, 100 pounds. 100 pounds is made up of 75 pounds and 25 pounds to me. 75 pounds creates a paid position for a freelance dance teacher, or as we're aiming for, also perhaps a freelance musician to play for a class. You could also look at that as sponsoring dancers for way under 30p or 30 cents, shall we say, because you've got one teacher, that teacher is paid. You've got dancers that have to usually pay up to £15 for a class to attend. Free class. How many can you have? How many can you fit in a Zoom call? The number's almost infinite, especially in terms of, the size of the average class. Right now, we're averaging 20 to 30 a class, but we could have 300 in a class, no problem. So at that point, you could say that you've not sponsored a class, you've not sponsored some dancers, you sponsored 301 people to deliver them what they need on a daily basis to get them to stay in the industry, to get them to keep dancing, to keep them not just physically well, but also mentally well, because there's a huge mental advantage. And we'll come back to that because something very important has happened in that area. Announcements on your podcast. But also, now if we move on to the larger donation, now there's some options, because in both cases, the two words I use are tangible and direct. That £100 has had a direct impact and a tangible impact. You know exactly what it's done. You've not given it to a faceless organization. You've given it, to example, for Anna Watkins, UK choreographer and artistic director, freelance, to deliver a class and pass on her knowledge to 300 dancers. It's direct and it's tangible. You can see it. If you want to register for the class, watch it, you can watch it. If you want to do one of our wellbeing classes, such as yoga, you can do it. It's tangible. You can touch it. It's right there. So direct and tangible are really important. With the larger donation, there's some options. We are more than happy to bring people on board. So we're happy. Anyone that teaches for us becomes a #team member. anyone that wants to go beyond that and become a supporter and a donor, like you're saying, £5,000, I mean, that would be a huge donation. Don't get me wrong. Please, if these people out here that listen to this feel that's casual, go for it. With that £5,000, yes, we can allocate some to the #FreeClass program. But if we unlock, we're going to have a future here. I want this organization to have a future and continue to respond. We can look at new ways of doing things. With Clive Burton, we did a memorial piece on Clive Burton. He's on our website. He's memorialized there as a team member, as someone that gave money or advised his friends to give money upon his deathbed. You know, what could be more tangible and direct as that? His memory lives on, and what he helped, you know, he launched really FreeClass, because I wouldn't have had that idea if the funding wasn't there. I was already trying to come up with how do I get more funding. When that barrier's lifted, suddenly there's a whole gamut of ideas and things we can look at. So I would love to run the FreeClass series in person. Let's get, you know, our sponsor venue, the Lantern Studio Theatre, can fit 50 dancers with social distancing guidelines on its dance floor area, and a teacher and a pianist. It's the same thing, £75 for a teacher, £75 for a pianist, but all those people get to do it for free. Now we've got £5,000. Why don't we give those dancers a creative session? When's the last time a freelance dancer who's been out of work had a chance to work in a creative session and create work? Then how do we use that work? Well, are you telling me that those 50 dance artists in that room couldn't find a way to take what they've made and show it to the world in a way that makes a difference? This is the idea behind Fun Freelance Dance. It's democratic, it's collective, it's everybody together giving their opinions and ideas, from the donors right the way across to the dance artists who only take part in the classes. And in between, you've got the teachers, the musicians, the composers, the photographers, all of them. And they've all got something to say and a way to give back. And I think that, you know, in the UK specifically, we have a government funding solution to the arts. Right. We have the Arts Council England, or in Scotland, Creative Scotland. So you've got a democratically elected political party allocating funding to the arts. Now, what happens next? First, the big companies obviously get the allocated funding. Are those companies run democratically? I don't know. Do they have one person at the top? Do they have a board at the top? Do they have the, you know, do the dancers make the decisions? I mean, I doubt that, but do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I love the idea that Elon Musk says with his tunnel system, that the reason that there's traffic in Los Angeles is that there's a 2D road system for a 3D working solution. So with dance, how does that work for us? I'm trying to figure out, we've got this system that isn't working for everybody. That's right. And then we've got this way of working that is working for everybody. We need to connect those two. We need to find a way to make those two work. And in my opinion, a collective action that's transparent, that has detailed, you know, feedback and plans going to those people that are funding it and put out publicly, it opens you for scrutiny. Yes, it's terrifying. Any member of the public could turn around, or even the dance community, and say, this thing Jamiel's doing is absolutely ridiculous. But that's what I want. I'm welcoming it, because I want to be able to say, we've responded to that. I want to be able to answer that person and say, okay, what would you do? Oh, you think this idea is good? Great. Let me ask these 300 people over here. What do you think about this solution? And they might say, yeah, he's right. Someone's been waiting to say that. I can't tell you. Every day before these classes, I make a speech, and I see the dancers sit there like, here he comes again. And I hit them. Yeah, sure, I get it. I hit them with these ideas. I say to them, right, this week, every single person, I want one of you to find one professional who's the same as you, a freelance artist who hasn't got access to class and doesn't know this is happening, and bring them to a class this week. That resulted in our numbers shooting up. Just 1 week later, we had double the numbers in the classes. 700 participants since January. It's a lot of people.
But I think you have to do that almost every day, because, look, let me put it this way. I mean, in my day job, because I do have a day job, I mean, the person who is responsible or over us is constantly pushing, right? Now, someone who knows what that is from that person's side, I can appreciate it, because sometimes if you don't have someone pushing you, you're not going to do it, right? It's just the way it is, right? So part of what's happening, I guess, with this idea is that it's a brilliant idea, right? The thing that I would wish, and maybe we talk about this and then we go into like what the insiders are thinking. The whole idea is that the UK seemed to have had the whole arts funding solved because you had councils, unlike in the United States. I mean, we have Americans for the Arts and some other nonprofits, but the majority of the US citizens don't even know what that is, right? And they're, depending on, let's say, New York, we have some great theaters and great dance companies that are funded by private and public funds, but it's not in our culture as a whole. I'd say that you guys over in the UK have a greater understanding of this funding of the arts. And as a result, let's just say when I was there, when it was open, when everything was open, I mean, you guys in London, at least in London, I believe you guys are now at the point where New York was in the late 70s, early 80s, with regard to, you go on the subway, all you see is arts, 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 arts. I mean, you guys do promo, like, it does not exist the way it used to exist in New York, right? But now there's a flip on the whole thing where you guys have to be, if you guys don't get more entrepreneurial in the UK, specifically on this issue, I mean, there's a lot of things that are not going to happen.
Well, so the thing is also, government funding does not mean a secure job for anyone. So what you're saying this about these big companies, and I'm sure you're referencing like Hoffer Schechter Company, everybody in the world's heard of Matthew Bourne's New Adventures, and many other big companies, you know, all the major ballet companies, they all receive a piece of the pie from the Arts Council or Creative Scotland. However, that doesn't mean that they employ dancers as full-time employed contract dancers like me. So I'm in such a lucky position, and this is one of the reasons that I wanted to start Fun Freelance Dance, was because I was safe. I was receiving this furlough pay. If we go back to work, we go back safely. I had this future ahead of me, and some of my closest friends had nothing waiting for them. And I wanted to meet their network, because I was like, this is you. What about everyone else that you know and works with you? You know, even the worst story, it seemed to get worse 2 people later. So, you know, where do these people work? Well, they work for the companies that you're probably thinking of as what, you know, we've sorted it in London or in the UK. These companies still have freelance self-employed artists working for them, and they don't argue this at all either. And this is not a negative thing. A short-term contract, a contract with an end where you still remain self-employed and do your own taxes, is the done thing in the biggest companies. And that's why a lot of those companies are running free workshops and classes, but it's the volume of the classes that matters in this particular case. You know, I can't applaud Matthew Bourne's New Adventures highly enough for putting out free classes with their rehearsal directors and associate directors, really good, top quality, but every day, they need it every day. And you know, the drawback is you do that class once, okay, you do it twice, by the 3rd time, you're no longer responding. You're just, you know, it's in there, that class, and you're just doing it over and over. You need a fresh class every single day. And at the moment, the focus on the hashtag free class has had unforeseen impacts, not because, you know, I think of it physically, keep dancers in shape, keep them ready, so that when these companies open up again, and Matthew, for instance, puts a big call out for dancers, there's a pool there that they can access, you know. You know, English National Ballet, when they put the next call out for Swan Lake, they're going to need, I'm not sure how many they take, but let's say it's 20 classical female dancers on point. You can't be on point on the day you get there. To get to the audition, you've already got to have been on point for at least 3 to 4 weeks to get it back. To be at the top standard, to stand alongside the incredible dancers at English National Ballet as a guest artist. This is the solution. This free class format is the solution. But those companies already are hemorrhaging resources as it is. You know, they can't put on a streamed class every day for the entire world, you know, but Fun Freelance Dance can. If it keeps receiving funding, it can do it daily. And the unforeseen consequence was not just the physical, as I was saying earlier, but the mental. And I had not accounted for this. You know, I put in well-being classes like yoga to start to look at that side. But before that had even started, I had a dance psychologist contact me and say, your name, as in Fun Freelance Dance's name, has come up in multiple client interviews in the last few weeks, you know, and what is it, what's going on? Because whatever it is, you can't stop now, because these people are relying on these classes now. These are the, you know, something that your wider audience need to understand. You were saying things that aren't obvious if you're not in dance. These aren't run-of-the-mill training sessions or classes with anybody. These are top-level classes with principal artists, principal dancers. We have the Associate Director of New Adventures, Etta Murphy. She donates her time to teach for those classes and donates her fee to allocate to another teacher. So she's, you know, she's giving back herself tenfold because she's doing one job and giving it to another person too. 2 for 1, buy one, get one free. Yeah, it's, you know, it's to understand that these are top level classes, and these freelance dance artists pre-pandemic, they might not have had access to classes at this standard every single day.
Sure.
They might have paid for a one-off workshop, a masterclass. But to have access to every single day a new process, and we're trying to introduce new things. So alongside training sessions, creative sessions, you know, we've been introducing not just short sequences at the end, but next week I'm going to trial an entire creation process for an hour and a half where there's no, you know, we'll do a quick warm up, but that will be the time and how it's used.
Let me ask you another question, like with regard to the insider thing, because you're definitely onto something. It's not even you're onto something. You're there, right? It's just getting everybody else there. So the insider, right? Let's say, what are some of the things that the people who are in the dance community, the insiders, what have been their reactions? Give us the full spectrum, and so then we can see if we can tackle that as well.
Well, a dangerous thing to do, in my opinion, would be to assume what they might think. So from day one, I made sure I asked them. I've been told by people that had experience with the freelance community, you know, this freelance dancer working in Selfridges, spraying perfume as the side job, they're not interested in you coming out and saying, I'm here to save all freelance dancers.
I see.
And I had to explain, this is not what this is about. This is not about me. This is why, you know, it's a good thing they said that, because as a result, the website and the way I put things out looks the way it does. It's #team. I don't bring on people to do a job and then they go away. They're a team member. They get platformed. They get a place on the website. They get a social media post. People find out that they're doing this. They find out where they're from and what they've done. Some of the CVs and bios on people that weren't given the self-employed benefit are insane. Like I said, one of them's an Olivier nominated dancer, can't be given any help from the government outside of universal credit, which in the UK, there was this big delay on this payout of this universal credit as well. So that made things even more complicated, because it was like the government will help a tiny bit, but you're also going to have to wait 8 weeks because of some computer error. The feedback is I don't know how to respond when I get it, because, you know, there's thank yous and there's a lot of what you're doing, which is, this is a big idea and this could have far-reaching consequences. And then they say to me, do you know that? Are you ready for this? Because you need to, you know, you can't drop out on us now you've started doing this. And I think that with the feedback, my response is always, it's received strangely, because it's very matter of fact. You know, I'll get a thank you and I'll say, no, this is how it has to be. Don't let this be this is some special treat that we've come up with this one-off. No, we're setting the new standard. I'm really focusing right now on trying to engage all the freelancers to understand that this is theirs. This belongs to them. If one of them wants to take the #FunFreelanceDance label and do what we're doing, win their circle for themselves, that's great. That's fine. That's what I'm looking for. I am trying, if anyone's listening in New York right now, it's on the art scene, I'm trying to get hold of someone in New York that I can give you the account for the Zoom, so you're not paying. Don't forget, Fun Freelance Dance has its own pro Zoom account, it's covered now. Website, professionally done logos. We had sponsorship for the email inboxes and things like this. You have a company manager in me that can take all of this and remotely manage it all for you. Take Fun Freelance Dance and do it in your area, do it in your country, city, village, whatever it is. I want you as a teacher, email me, Jamiel@funfreelancedance.com. I want you as teachers. I want you as choreographers. I want you as people to sit and have chats like this as. Yeah, this is how it is. There's no this. Yes, okay, thank you. It's nice to hear, but this is what it's got to be, guys. We've got to make this the status quo now. We can't go back. Nothing is the same now. No one's doing the jobs they thought they'd be doing. Nobody's doing what they trained for. Everyone's stuck in this situation now, and this is it. This is the status quo. And someone very wise has said that to me recently, that none of us thought we'd be here doing what we're doing, but this is what it is. And this applies to Fun Freelance Dance. If we don't do this, if there isn't a version of this happening, it's game over for a lot of people.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And that has knock-on consequences, David. Venues.
Yeah, of course. Economic.
Huge economic impact.
Huge economic impact. I mean, we can talk about, and this is why, I keep hammering like, look, you and I have talked. I did not do the professional dance career, although I dance, right? For this very reason that we are talking about, right? The very moment that we are sitting and moving through. For some reason, my parents they never said don't dance, right? But they would look at it with the side eye. You know what the side eye, we say the side eye. But even though they both are creative people, my mother is an artist, right? Mm-hmm. None of the people in my family, with the exception of my niece now, is moving into this in a full manner. I think part of what people don't understand, and maybe this is in the United States culture, also maybe in the UK, is that everyone looks at the individual, right? That person is doing this. This person is dancing here. He's starting Fun Freelance Dance. I'm gonna be, on the cover of this magazine, whatever it is. It's very eye-centric, but the whole idea of dance is a community thing. So for me, as someone who's very much into community, is a no-brainer. And I would be one of the few people that when we were dancing that would understand this, right?
Oh, you said something important too, having a face and a name and all that. We can't get platformed. No one will speak to me. No one will print anything that I've tried to get printed. I've only managed to achieve one article at our launch in the Dancing Times, which in the UK is the big magazine for dance, right. Basically ballet centric with a touch of contemporary. They do cover other things too, but the Royal Ballet will be on the cover 90% of the time. So that's only, it's not negative. It's just that
it's just the way it is.
Well, but that's one particular sphere. That's one particular the Dancing Times readers. I tried the Times, I tried the Telegraph, I even tried the Daily Mail, which I'd never read myself. And that's why this is another way that we're going to turn it on its head. So dance writing. Dance writers are an important part, just like I've got all these composers and other things. Dance writers. So I can announce on your podcast, this is an exclusive because I did announce it yesterday, but we have a first dance writer that I've commissioned. So using Fun Freelance Dance money, I spoke to a dance writer about the situation right now for dance writing, and it's not great, and I won't go into the details, but this dance writer was very surprised that I'd be willing to pay for a research and development period to get together a pitch. And then she said, right, and I'll get, we'll send it out to here and here. And I was like, no, hold that thought. We're going to send it to different places. We're going to, just like you met me on LinkedIn, just like I'm spamming Instagram every second I get, Facebook, we're going to send it to BuzzFeed. We're going to send it to Vice News. We're going to send it to Lad Bible. Who would think Lad Bible for something like this? Well, hopefully that will pay off. Who knows?
What is Lad Bible?
Lad Bible is a channel on Facebook and then obviously YouTube and the others.
Okay.
The original Lad Bible channel is, lad jokes, which in the UK is like blokes, men's jokes. Okay, so it would always be, it will be some extreme stunt. It will be some unbelievable goal in football. But then there's new ones emerging from the same channel because they were a startup and they've grown to a big organization now. There's lad cooking, lad this, lad that. I mean, I might be, butchering the different names, but there's also lad arts, which is something to do. I think the title might be lad culture, but they have a huge viewership. Their audiences are, they don't have problems getting messages out. why rely on the newspapers that won't print these kind of stories and will put them behind a subscriber paywall anyway, when I can get it out for free on Lad Bible if I can convince one of them to platform me, and have, you know, alongside a funny meme and, you know, alongside an interesting story with Vice News about how they make soap in Syria. And I love Aleppo soap, by the way, it's the best, olive soap. You know, alongside that, what about a story about this startup for dance? These dancers that are struggling to make ends meet, a whole sector that could be lost, a whole generation that could end their careers early, a whole generation that could miss out on work. We should come back to that at some point as well, providing work. So, you know, you were talking about the people that aren't inside the dance community, but also the people in the dance community. We are creating paid opportunities. We have created 45 paid opportunities from, you know, 4 creative sessions as one example, totaling more than a weekly wage, you know, a really decent amount. We've also done individual one-offs. We've got these teaching places. I've just commissioned a dance writer. That's a paid position. I'm excited to announce on your podcast that we have placed teachers into major educational organizations now. I've personally, you know, looking for dancers, because don't forget, this started because I realized the dancers I always wanted to work with were leaving the industry or couldn't dance at the moment.
Sure.
Those dancers get to do all the classes, and then I say, hey, I need a dancer to do this job. So when I was phoned up the other day by Celtic Connections, Jamiel, can you make a duet to stick it in Scotland's, Glasgow's biggest music venue, the Hydro? We need it in 3 days, and we need it done COVID safe. Well, I've got a pool of dancers. I know which ones have been dancing and are in shape and ready to go. I know which dancers would suit the style because I get to see them every day. And I can say, hey, look, I've created a paid opportunity through Fun Freelance Dance here. And that, you know, that in itself has gone full circle from this idea of how do I solve this problem to solving that problem at the moment for me. What happens when, a bit like we said, Matthew Bourne, when his tours return, what happens when they need dancers? What if having an audition is not either COVID safe, or what if they need some people that there's some kind of, you know, Etta getting to be in those classes gets to see which dancers are still in the game, still doing what they're doing. I'm hoping that although this tool is great for me to say it's working and it's all great, I'm hoping these big organizations start to say, oh, actually, I see the value in this. I mean, Studio Wayne McGregor must see the value because he's done it himself. He's putting on these classes now free. And he's going to continue doing them as I think they wind down sometime as we hopefully unlock. Yeah, it's very exciting for me. I can't stop espousing all these different things.
Look, I'm gonna say this, and then we're gonna move to video, the role of dance video, because we're going to talk about the filmmaking part, because I think this is also critical. And just like yesterday's interview that I was telling you about, I interviewed extremely creative person who understands it at multiple levels. I think you do as well. Explain to people the role, from your perspective, the role of filmmaking in video with regard to dance in this modern time. I mean, is that too big of a...
No, I think that I can give you my experience. And, you know, it would be wrong of me to say this is how it is and, you know, give out attitudes, because I think a lot of different companies and dance organizations right now are exploring many options, and nobody sees some of the stuff they're making coming before it comes out. And the ones I've personally been involved with the company I dance for, nobody saw that coming either. What I would say is dance and filmmaking, what it's done for me. In 2015, I decided I wanted to, you know, I'd always choreographed, you know, all dance artists, somewhere in there is going to be a choreographer lurking about. And my one wanted to come out in 2015 and say, look, I want to do this as a job. This is great. And I got a piece on in the Edinburgh Fringe, and I got a piece on in a small Glasgow-based festival. I did those 2 pieces, and I immediately wrote to every director in the world and said, I'm a choreographer, I made these pieces, I want to work with your amazing dancers. And they were like, that's lovely, Jamiel. However, we need some demonstrated language. We need to know about your movement toolkit that you use. We need to know about how you generate material. We need to see footage. And there wasn't much footage. So I was feeling frustrated. I'd done my mentorship in choreography as well, which was going really well. And I wanted to be a choreographer more than anything, and I couldn't get platformed in the places that back then I thought were the only places you could get platformed. So I picked up my phone, this exact phone, and I started to record in the studio. But what I did that was different to my colleagues is rather than just sit at the front, I started to get up and capture all the best bits, the bits I wanted them to see. Because, you know, they said, we want to see your language, how you express yourself. And I wanted to show the best I could express in the best of my language. So after 2 weeks of doing this, I had a friend over and I said, do you want to see what I've been making in the studio? And this is about 2017, 2018. He was like, no. But I was like, well, I'm going to show you anyway. So I showed him, and he was at the early stages of becoming a filmmaker. And he said, oh, you're also filmmaking now. And I thought about it for 2 seconds. And I just went, yeah. And he said, you're doing something quite cinematic. Have you looked at stabilizing the phone? Mm-hmm. And so I looked online, and lo and behold, gimbal technology for phones has sort of only been around a couple of years, and I was getting in at the beginning. So I picked up a gimbal, and like, long story short, I started to capture my work for film and not for stage. Even though stage was the end goal, I was ending up producing works as films. And the thing that kickstarted that was, after only 3 months of doing this and only 3 films out, the BBC phoned me up and said, would you like to do this massive project with 43 dancers, and you'll be choreographing, directing, managing the whole day, doing the editing, we'll produce the end product for you, but you'll do, you know, yeah, sure. Because, you know, if you say no, or I'm not ready, that's it. You've lost before you started. You just got to say, yeah, I can do it, no problem. And I wasn't really in over my head like I thought I'd be. And I did know what I was doing. And the way I was capturing was, I was running around like a lunatic, and I choreographed myself into the work. This led to more work, BBC, Google Arts and Culture, you know, certain technology brands saying, you know, we've seen you're doing this with our technology. We've never seen, you know, we haven't seen much of this, especially not a grassroots version. Would you like a free phone? Not free, but, you know, sponsored phone. Would you like, can we give you more lenses? You're making our equipment look good in a new and different way. And that's why I started to get involved in the language around startups and technology, because obviously doing that with the phones and the filmmaking equipment, I keep pointing because I keep it behind me in my little shelf. You know, after doing all of that, I started to glean new terms that were outside of dance and were really in production and film. And this was all kicking off in 18, 19, and 20. Right. So when it came to the pandemic and everyone was like, we need to move to capture, I didn't need to move anywhere. I was there already. Always punching above my weight, always underestimated, always getting more than you paid for and didn't know that that was there, you know. And so, you know, I did a music video, and I did this full-length music video with 2 dancers from Ballet Black. And I did it on the UK's, I think it was the widest circular track they'd ever built, with one of the most expensive wide-angle capture lenses. And this music production company was like, I hope this works, because we put a lot of money into this. And, you know, it was okay. I was happy with the end product. I was very happy in person, which a choreographer, I feel like, you know, when there's editing involved and you're not in charge of it, decisions start to get made.
Well, then it gets...
yeah. But you know, it wasn't bad. My worst case scenario is always good. I'm like, if it's good, that's my worst case scenario. I'm always trying to aim higher than that. I want to break through. I want to punch through. I did something with the Peter Darrell Trust up here in Scotland. So Peter Darrell, founder of Scottish Ballet, the trust gave me some money to do stuff, and I'm just continuing on that front. And one connection I made, the first connection I made outside of myself with Fun Freelance Dance, was Beer 52, which is a startup. You know, they are a beer subscription service in a way. They're doing something new, beer in the post, but also you get an experience where you drink it and watch entertainment online. And they said, do you want to make something for us? And we have this tiny budget, and I couldn't make that budget work, you know, until I said, oh, but what if I use Fun Freelance Dance? So a dancer was sponsored, and then the fee from Beer 52 also then boosted that to make that the correct level for a freelance dancer. And with me volunteering for the filmmaking, we managed to get something together. So yeah, if the question is dance and filmmaking,
well, look, you've said a lot. You've said a lot. I mean, I see all of the different parts. I mean, this is turning in almost into like a how do you say, a brainstorming session. I can see all the different parts. I can see all the different parts, but that's me and I'm different, right? Like this is after talking to this person last night, I was like, Dave, you're different, right? Like it's clear that you think differently. Yeah. And part of the issue is every day you have to hammer out who you are and what you're trying to do, right? And it never ends. It's never ending. Just when you feel like you're comfortable, where people understand where you're coming from, you have a conversation with somebody and it goes, whoop, you know, it's so hard to keep people's attention, right? How do you as an organization, I mean, you've already talked about it in bits, how are you planning to keep people, even the people that you want to, you know, bring in, like the dancers, how are you going to keep their attention with regard to this? Because maybe they think, oh, okay, he'll do this for a year, and then when the pandemic is over, then he'll go back to doing what he normally would do, you know, would do.
It's not that kind of deal. It's not that kind of deal. And that's because this issue only goes away when every freelancer has no problem getting work and everyone's employed and having a great time, you know, and only modern and exciting working practices are happening in every organization around the world. And this doesn't need to do that anymore. I think that, you know, the other day, about 3 weeks ago, I realized I was meeting a barrier in the fact that I was volunteering twice a week to teach. I was doing all of the social media still. It was always just me. I'd set up all this website and branding, and you know, it started off with, oh, I only need to update these few sentences every day to keep it up to date, to then it's a few sentences on 2 pages, then it's 5 pages, then it's 25 pages. Then you've also got, you know, this t-shirt thing. I put that, you know, I've put that out to the community. I got these t-shirts, but I don't know if we should sell them. I don't know if we should auction them. I don't know if we should raffle them. I don't know. Because, you know, if the only people that buy these are freelance dancers and the donations are going back in the pot, that's again, the freelancers paying into the freelance dance community.
Right, I get it.
What I really need to elevate this further is enough money and enough social pull power to get more people espousing the same ideas under the same logo and label, and to take out their egoic, you know, this is John Smith's dance, this is so-and-so's dance, and say, look, we are all at the moment, because of this pandemic especially, we are all fund freelance dance. And if we all commit to this, you know, they say that when you, if you put something into something, you get some, you know, you always get it back.
You get something back.
This could come back tenfold. This could not only keep people in shape for when stuff reopens, this could fundamentally start being what reopens. This could be what's happening. This could be the job that people want to be in. And, you know, my only regret with the initial launch was that I couldn't afford more dancers. The 300 CVs in 4 days to do the original fun freelance dance. And that's one person that had to take all those emails and say, look, I can't do this. So we assembled the team, the hashtag team, which at that time was me, the freelance dancer who I modeled a lot of the ideas on, and the main sponsors. And we sat there and we chose, you know, and when we brought someone new on, we then involved them in it, and so. So right now, do you know, I don't know off pat how many there are, but I think it's about 33 hashtag team members. And all of them will get a say and have specialist areas where I can go to them and say, what do we do about this? There is a caveat here that I've realized that your listeners may be like, well, why doesn't he just ask them more often and get them to do things? I am not taking any volunteer work from freelance dancers, because this is the problem. Unpaid work, do it for the prestige, do it for a reduced rate. This is not what's happening. This is not fixing anything. This is bailing out a boat that's got, you know, a fist-sized hole in its keel. We need to have jobs. Those jobs need to be paid. I've had so many dancers say, you know, when you teach, I can demonstrate for you for free. No, not doing that. Or I could volunteer to teach. No, if I can't pay you, you're not doing it. This needs to be a paid platform only. If you're freelance, you're paid. And that I have to say that's, you know, saying reaction from the freelance community. That's given a certain level of trust there. If they get a phone call from me, they know that I'm not phoning them to waste their time. If I want them to do something, it's going to be paid, and it's going to be platformed, and it's going to be seen. And I
Let me
think
ask you
that
real
transparency.
quick. I'm sorry to interrupt, but quick question: how many people responded to the first call to action? 300. You received 300.
300 in 4 days applied to be in it. So applied as dancers. That's 300 dancers that had read the brief and realized that they, or didn't realize, I mean, they were in this terrible situation. And this, you know, I wrote on the brief, this is not going to fix everything for everyone. This is only going to raise awareness, because, you know, what is the point in someone saying to me, oh, well, you're not going to help everyone, so what's, you know, why are you doing it? I had this from many
Someone
people.
said that to you?
Many people will say, you know, many people who aren't in the freelance industry, I should add.
Sure.
What about this? What about that? Oh, you could have done that better. You know, this is not the attitude that's going to fix things. You know, Elon Musk, I keep referring to Elon because I'm really into Elon.
Well, there's a reason, right?
He launches rockets that crash, and he knows they're going to crash. And people say, why would he waste his money doing that? Well, he's not going to find the solution to his problem, you know, without the experimentation. There are going to be cracks. There are going to be problems. There are going to be issues. But I tell you what, we've not had a major one. We might have had some small things. Could we finish the day earlier? Could we put in a better lunch break? On this paid engagement, I've realized it's going to take me travel time to get there. Can that travel time be covered? Good. And yes, it can, because our public that donate understand that, you know, it's not anyone deciding. It's not just me deciding, do we agree to pay out this money, or do we spend the money in this area? I'm asking everyone every day, 20 freelancers a day to 30 freelancers a day in that class. And I always ask them a question. I say, what do you think? Can you email me what you think? Can you tell me? I get some crazy email. I'm not going to lie. I get emails telling me that things that I didn't even know were a problem were the thing affecting them most. Everything from funding worries to dancewear. I had one about dancewear. Can fund freelance dance innovate in the region of dancewear? And of course, you know, maybe one day, I don't know, the fund freelance dance jockstrap is born. But you know, it's very exciting. I feel like I'm the melting pot.
You're onto something. You're onto something, and this is why. I mean, this was the issue that really prevented me from becoming a professional dancer. Everything that you're talking about, because I saw myself as someone that, like, I want, although this is not happening, right? Oh, I was going to get, because I went to law school and I went to business school, but really was because I needed to have the business knowledge to support people like you and support people like myself, right? Let's say you create an artwork, but it's not valued at the right, you know, they undercut you, right? Like, they give you money, and like, what? Yeah, it's market driven. So part of what I've been trying to do, at least think about, is how can I, as an individual, affect the market, the creative market? So this platform, as DavidPFranceTV, is literally that, which is, I'm trying to galvanize all of these different people that are pieces of the creative industry, so that we literally can have a second renaissance. I think the last renaissance, in my eyes, and I can't speak for the UK, but in the late 70s, early 80s, at least in New York, because New York had gone down so far, then came the Renaissance. We didn't know it was a Renaissance. I think people are still starting to realize it now, you know, 30 years later, like how much creativity happened during the time that we were coming up in the 80s. I mean, and then of course people started dying as a result of the AIDS, HIV crisis. But when I lived 40 minutes outside of New York, you could turn on the TV and see dance like in a heartbeat. You didn't have to search to see it even on television, right? So I think there's an opportunity now for people like yourself, people like myself. We have to regenerate it, and I think you've done an excellent job of passionately presenting this opportunity. I honestly believe you are on the cutting edge that people don't, people maybe, you know, where you are, they don't get it yet. But I see it, because what else is going to happen? Like, you know, the pandemic continues, right? And stops people. And you have to figure out a way to continue, right?
Yeah, I also think that, there's great wisdom in turning to established figures within the arts, big choreographers or directors who have a wealth of knowledge, but they weren't always in that position, and they weren't always, being asked these questions. And it's a shame, really, that we couldn't maybe place more emphasis on what about those that don't really know about these problems, which I'm in as a category.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to manage people on this scale. 700 people is a lot of people at the moment. I've not had to manage that scale before. And sometimes not knowing anything can be just as useful as having been through this experience 20 times. I'm able to maybe apply logic in a way that isn't readily available over in the very experienced category, because that problem maybe wasn't so big for them, or they fixed it one way and that's how they do. That's the status quo. What I'm trying to say is that I don't need to know the situation in every single freelance job, self-employed job. I don't need to know. That's why I'm not sitting here telling you, well, at this company it's like that, and at this company it's like that.
No.
I don't need to know that. I just need to identify the problems and say, as a collective and as an experiment, how would we solve this? Oh, we do it like this. If that turns out to be the best way to do it, great. If it turns out to be a good way to do it, that's still a win. And if it turns out to be the wrong way to do it, it's still a win, because we can then from that figure out, okay, that doesn't work, out it goes. And it's very similar to video editing. Video editors, yes, there are schools you can go to, but a lot of video editors, any video editor working in 2021 is constantly having to check YouTube and self-teach themselves new and emerging tools to fix problems they didn't know they had. Whether it's in color grading technology, transition technology, CGI, all of it, the technology is moving faster than the technique. And therefore, those people are constantly adapting quickly. And that's what my journey into video making has been, filmmaking. Yeah. And with this, the situation is moving quicker than any organization can keep up with. And that's why, although it's great, in many circumstances, say, oh, well, we've been very proactive. And in 2025, we've scheduled this amazing solution. But what about right now? We need to be reactive. And it's one of the only times, it's one of the times that reactive solutions are actually more useful than certain proactive solutions. Because if the problem is now and the time it takes for that problem to reach breaking point is fairly soon, then saying, well, when we get to 2025 and everyone's unlocked and everything's back to normal, you're just dismissing this whole group of people that they're not coping. They're barely hanging in there. My class numbers are going up as a result of the average number going down. The people that are in these classes, they've made the decision now. They're the hardcore. No matter what, they're going to keep going with this. They are going to keep dance going. They are going to keep dancing. They want to stay in this industry. They've committed to the sector. The weaker hands, and I don't want to call them that, but that's a market terminology. Weaker hands are people that sell in a market early because they're worried about prices falling. They're gone now. Those earlier group, they've left. They've said, look, they've thrown in the towel, and fair enough to them. If they found another way, that's great. But these people that are left, they're going to get hit the hardest. They're the ones that are now facing, homelessness, essentially, financial struggle on a scale that I'll never relate to at this stage. We've got to find a solution for this. Because
let me offer some solution, because we've gone long. I want to make sure that we've covered everything. Is there a way that you can share this is what I'm going to ask. Can you share actual numbers or in terms of what it is that you need for the rest of 2021 in terms of money, actual hardcore fundraising?
Yes, right now, in the immediate right now, if you want to do something today, you can give £75 or $100 to our GoFundMe page. That can be found by fundfreelancedance.com, and you've directly and tangibly created a paid position for a freelance dance teacher. If enough people do that, a freelance musician as well. That's for our free class series. The wider picture, I'm aiming to raise £60,000. I'm hoping we've already got to about 10, so we're a sixth of the way there.
which isn't bad since, you know, September 2020. We're aiming for £60,000. Once we have the £60,000, I can bring on more team members that do what I do in their area. You know, yes, there's volunteering and using their time, but if these people are working in Uber or working in Amazon 10 till 7 p.m. every night, there's very little time left for them, and they don't have access to the equipment I have. So being able, you know, simple things like being able to provide a microphone to a freelance pianist means that that pianist can then be paid in that job, not only on our Zoom calls, but on the other freelance dance Zoom calls that he's doing at the moment. And the wider picture is back in the studio, and you'll get to decide what it looks like, how it's made, and where it's going to be seen. So anyone who wants, any big fish out there that want to, you know, really fix this problem for us, or just do a tax write-off, this would be an unbelievable value proposition. That's what I've always done as an independent creator. I've offered a value proposition. I create films out of one backpack, and now, you know, for £7,000, we effectively changed 21 people's lives for the better over a month period. Imagine what we could do with 60.
Well, I will offer, this is what I can offer. And I also want to run and get this article out of the Financial Times. Usually, I mean, people say don't buy the magazines or the newspapers anymore because they're going, you know, online and things like this. But occasionally when I do the flip of the magazine, I run across something that illustrates a point that I've been trying to make or some idea. So first I'll say that I'll propose to you on air, this is, we can call it on air, that you can bring on, because I believe, I'm a strong believer in branding, but I also am a strong believer in presenting talent so that people can understand. You said there's a prestige factor, you know, that people are working for the prestige factor. Part of the issue that dance has is that the people outside of the community don't understand its prestige. So when I started a dance company years ago, and I sort of went, you know, because I had to work, part of what I was trying to do was associate dance with other things, like dance associated with sports, or dance associated with fashion, or dance associated with cross-pollinating with other art forms. So that's why I believe that your filmmaking is really important, because people like to watch videos. That's why I believe fashion, you know, my whole interest in fashion is sort of, you know, there's an easy way to cross these two, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to run and get the paper and come back real quick. But I would like to, all of the people that are currently involved with freelance dance, have them on for an interview. It doesn't have to be a long interview. Have them wear the shirt, but then also talk about their background and, you know, what the training is like in order for them to be a professional dancer. Because one of the issues that dance has is that it's so insular that people will, like, what's going to make somebody pay? Like, you know, like, I don't want to be vulgar, but, and you know, there are people that pay for dumb stuff, you know, online.
Yeah.
Right. And it's because they feel like there's a need for it, or they feel like by buying it or being included in the sort of prestige of it, that it somehow makes them feel better. And I think that part of dance, sometimes we forget about it. And every business has to make it a priority of interacting with the public. And that's what I do on a daily basis with the job that I have now. So I get to do that 24/7, and then afterwards I get to do it online as well. So I think the same way that you have this dance shirt on, this fun freelance dance, we can decide how many times the interviews come, because I really feel strongly about this, and have them wear the black t-shirt, have them introduce fun freelance dance, how much they've raised at that particular time. You know, we could schedule it alongside of my interviews, however you want to do it, and then give an update on what's going on with freelance dance. And then we post this everywhere so that people can constantly see this logo, this black logo with the, you know, and they start to see that there's a community of people that are actually attached to the concept. Because sometimes people don't see it, right? They say, okay, it's one guy here talking, but people are lazy. They want to see everything like with the click of a button.
Well, if your audience would be interested in learning about the original set of team members, we've extended quite a bit by now, but on our homepage, you'll find the powerful messaging system we used of having those dancers sit, and teachers actually, and pianists sit and just face the camera as a selfie and explain what they were doing before the pandemic, what happened when the pandemic hit, what they've lost, and what Fun Freelance Dance could do for them. So I really like this idea of getting them on now as well, and seeing where they are now. But if you want to see them back then, as before they even experienced the idea in person, but being told by me what I wanted to do, you can get that now. And I wanted to also say a huge thank you to you for being the first person to platform this in a video format, especially. And the other thing I wanted to say is that you've talked a lot about your audience being from all walks of life and all backgrounds. And I'm keenly aware that the Marcus Rashford Free School Meals campaign worked so well in the UK because Marcus Rashford is a footballer, and he's the last person you'd expect to be getting irate about the situation for everyday free school meals. And what this Fun Freelance Dance needs is not a principal dancer. We need someone that's outside of dance, I don't know, it could be anything, a business mogul, fashion mogul, a known face in something, tech, anything. We need someone to pick this issue up and share this issue with their community. Because I think one of the issues with this is the awareness. Like you said, a lot of people don't know where that money goes, what it does, and how it can be used.
Well, look, I will tell you, I've been very, very close to getting funding for what it is that you're doing, right? So I've been on this case for years and years and years. And I'll just briefly say, there was one time that I was really pressing the fashion designer Diane von Furstenberg. This was years ago. That's a whole nother episode. I literally was like almost stalking this woman. I had maybe 4 meetings with her. And the idea is like, look, you're making a lot of money and you have clothes that we could actually use as dance clothes. Well, it turned out she was already funding a dance company, unbeknownst to me. I stumbled upon it, but for whatever reason, she just was not, she was giving the money personally to him, the choreographer. And we'll go into once I'll tell you more about it, but I enjoyed the chase because I knew what the result could be. And she already had a space in West Village, New York City, where you could, as an arts person, come in and, she would lend it to you, but you had to pay for all of the costs of setting up and closing down. So she already had the prestige, she had the space, right? It was all about somebody like me trying to get other people into that space. So I was more like, what do you say, a promoter, or what they would call a Dagliev. Facilitator, Dagliev type person, where I could see all the different elements, but nobody else is seeing it, right? So I literally had to like knock on her door. And now, of course, that idea has moved on, but it's one of the key things that happened when I was coming up, because I said, hey, look, she of all people would get it. She was less interested in the art of dance. I think she was more specifically interested in a particular artist, which is still good, right? Still, it's not a bad thing. And the experience taught me a lot. I mean, I can't, maybe tenacity. I mean, I wrote things and I faxed to her husband. I faxed the whole proposal to her husband because I was like, look, she's not getting it, right? He's the one with a lot more money. Let's see if he will get it. Faxed to her, faxed to him. I don't know how I got his fax number. And the next thing you know, I get an email from her. This is years ago. This is 2011, 2010.
I mean, I've also been banging on people's doors regularly. But something I was thinking as well, right now, I like to think of things, again, it's a film editing thing in terms of workflow.
Yeah.
I have blockage right now, which is at the moment, I said it's £75 a class I can pay. Right now, I'm week to week on this. And some weeks I've got to personally fund those teachers myself, or I have to volunteer to teach myself. And as my work starts to, take up more time, I have to make some tough decisions. And what would be great is if we had the security of even 10 classes covered, which is, you know, £750 or more. Not only could I schedule 4 weeks of classes now, right up until hopefully when we unlock, I could let those teachers know when they're happening. So I'm not phoning them up last minute so that they've got longer time to prepare.
Mhm.
I can let the dancers now know in advance. I can say, look, there's a full gamut of classes for 4 weeks here across all these styles. I can make a much better plan, and then I'm not waiting till Friday to announce the class for the following Monday. And that's not, you know, people that are these freelancers are working now in not, I mean, there's regular jobs that aren't dance. And they need to let those places know, look, can I start late on this day? So I can do this class. And unfortunately, at the moment, that's not available to us. So we do get dancers that have to maybe leave the experience early. And we have dancers that can't take part on certain days. And we also have dancers that have said, oh, you know, I've done a lot of ballet this week. I only wanted to really do contemporary classes. But because I can't guarantee I can book those contemporary teachers, I can't let them know that actually that contemporary is coming.
I get it. It's a scheduling issue.
So
it's a scheduling issue, and it's
a funding issue.
It's an operational issue as well, right? So it really is a business, you guys. It may not be the kind of business that you normally associate with, right? Or but it takes money coming in and money actually goes out. And part of what and this is why I'm committed, you can bring on anybody that's a part of your organization, and we have the interview, we talk about what it is. And I think we schedule as I'm scheduling other interviews, right? So it can be like once a month, it can be twice a month. Yeah. So that people start to see this. And I can tell you right now, there are at least 5 people I can actually email this to say, hey, look, you need to give money to this guy.
I mean, the one thing that's apparent is that the website really does tell them what it does on the tin. But, you know, a website is like a house in the middle of nowhere. Without advertising, you don't have a road or a signpost to lead people there. I'm limited by my own social media bubble, which is what the dancers are just waking up to, that it's not pictures of themselves dancing only. You know, they could also share the website, share the initiatives, share the things they're going for. And a lot of them recently have said, I click, I get it. Because don't forget, there are people out there that are sharing themselves. They're sharing their classes they want you to pay for. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that it's a competitive marketplace, but they don't realize that they're actually doing themselves out of a job, because instead of joining the collective, if you like, they're eating out of their own pocket. These freelance dancers that are paying them are going to run out of money at some point, and that is not a sustainable. I
understand. You hit the nail on the head. You are 100% correct, and I think part of what you're facing and what I've faced in the past and even now, there is the marketplace at work, right? There is a way to, how do you say, mind bend the marketplace, right? Or there's a way to manipulate. I don't want to say the word manipulate, but markets are manipulated, but it's in a good, positive way. It's only that you have to really share more of yourself and also develop relationships. The downside of what's happening is that back then people really didn't share, they didn't relate, and we didn't have the internet. The internet has isolated people in a way that we still are coming to some understanding about. So even though you have a website, and even if to tell somebody to go to something and check it out, that's even a big ask, right? It's because there's so many things that people are distracted by. So that's why the collective and the platform sharing is even more important than ever, because no one in this climate can do it on their own. Let me run and get this. I'm talking to you. I wanted to share with this, and then I'm going to ask you for maybe a closing. And
well, the isolation, one thing I want to say is that isolation you just mentioned, yes, it's isolated people, but it's also decentralized everything. You could take a class in New York at a certain time of day with someone you'd never have access to normally, because we're all delivering these things on a decentralized platform now. That's what the internet allows. What else is developing in a decentralized way? currency, cryptocurrency. So that decentralized model, people say, what is cryptocurrency? I don't get it. And with this, the idea of decentralizing dance at the moment and providing these free classes, you know, it's not immediately obvious to everyone, including the people that are taking part in it. But I strongly believe that there's something here that could, you know, go forwards and not breed, but expand. You can't take class. You can't turn up in New York right now and say, can I take class with so-and-so company? Because of COVID. You can't arrive in London and ask ENB, do you mind if I come and do class as a guest? Because for a change, yeah, they do mind, because you're not being tested every day. You know, you don't know their protocols. That's also gone away, don't forget. So that type of class that's free is disappeared too.
Wait, this is the flip side of that. And this is, I understood from a very early age. Like, the classes are great, but ultimately people want to perform in a show. So
Absolutely.
the issue for me is that there's not enough talent or people that are out there that know how to develop shows that would employ lots and lots and lots of people. The thing that's upsetting, this is for me, the thing that drives me is the fact something like Cirque du Soleil, right, for example, appeared from the outside as a very powerful organization, right? And in the blink of an eye, you know, some sort of downturn, you know, the whole thing is collapsed, right? And thousands of jobs lost, right? So even the strongest, the organization that you think is the most fortified, the strongest organization, the fact that it's an arts organization, you're already starting at a disadvantage in comparison to other business models, other economic sectors.
Yeah, if they're struggling, then we're going to have a really solid idea for this thing to take off. So,
exactly.
You know, this is why the fact that it has done so well, even if sometimes I'm not articulating it clearly or it's confusing, like, it's working, especially for those in the industry. And I want it to work as much for those in it as it does out. And an example of that I'll give is someone recently paid for 4 teachers. They covered 4 whole classes. And they said, you know, it's great. Can we get any pictures? And I said, sign into the stream. And so what they did is they streamed the class to the entire office that this person had access to, an office of 70 people. They all watched the ballet class that morning. Interestingly, that gave a sort of strange performance opportunity to those that wanted to share what they were doing. So, you know, what does that under a magnifying glass look like in the future? We'll find out. I hope.
You're right on track. I mean, let's just put it this way: you're on track now. The thing is that when you're on track and you're in sort of the eye of the storm or in the storm, you don't necessarily know it. But I can feel it because I've always felt this way about the arts. I felt that the way the whole system worked was upside down. And part of it was that I said, we have to get more savvy about how to market dance artists, because I should know who you are just like I know who that footballer is. Or, you know, I don't even know the footballer's name, but in the UK, it's important, right? That if people know the footballer, they should know who you are, right? And I think that dance somehow, for whatever reason, has always had this sort of, you know, weird, like, people love it when it's great and everybody knows it and it's popular, but if it's obscure and it's sort of, you know, insular, then they just are not even mindful of it. And that's just the nature of how it works. But there was a time where, you know, in the movies, and we talked about Gene Kelly's widow, the famous American dancer's widow. Patricia posting stuff every day.
Wonderful, yeah.
She's posting up, and the thing is that back then, dance was driving an entire film industry. Right. So right now what's happening is that you don't have the visionary people with the resources that can do the modern version of that. There's no one in Hollywood that can just go back to back to back to musical. And even if they could, they would have to construct it in a way that's contemporary, that would get people either on Netflix or on, you know, Amazon Prime. There's no one in the power structure that have the money, the people that have the money that say, I'm going to greenlight a dance, you know, movie. They see TikTok people dancing. They see YouTube people dancing. They see it all over the place. There's no one that's out there at this moment, in my eyes, that can translate what is happening on the street to the theater. And back then it was much easier because I guess the film industry was at its infancy, and dance was had a different not prestige, but position in society. Everybody danced.
It's what the people wanted to see. And I think that if the TikTok stars and the YouTube stars, who I now have great respect for, are doing what people want to see and can take part in. And what I want Fun Freelance Dance to do is equally, give people an opportunity to feel like they've taken part, even if they're not the people directly dancing. They've got stuff to see, they've got stuff to sponsor, that they can see the result, like planting a seed, they see the tree afterwards. And I think that you talked again about power structures. And if we're living in this decentralized reality now, because especially, I don't know about you, but with this pandemic, things have become much more 24-hour. And people are making connections because for some people, that's like, this could be the end. I'm going to do the things I wanted to do. Things are happening all the time in a decentralized way, cross-continental, cross-border. And it's no longer going to fly that maybe one person makes a decision that affects everything. We need to start looking at these decentralized power structures and these, like, the idea of consensus, the idea of everyone agreeing that this is the way to go forward, a democratic, decentralized way of doing things. And I think that people associate that with politics, and outside of politics, what does a decentralized and democratic structure look like when it's just run of the mill? It's every day for some people. We all agreed this with Fun Freelance Dance. We all decided, yes, we want live musicians at this. We all decided, yes, we'd like to do this as a film. We all decided that we would like more contemporary classes, less ballet classes, more creative sessions, maybe less yoga, although that's never the case, always more and more yoga. So that's why I always ask, and that's anyone that wants to give money, be ready, because I'm going to involve you. Unless you say to me, please leave me alone, I will certainly email you with updates, what we're doing, what we'd like to do, what would you like to do. And I can't wait to have some of our supporters in the studio, finally, because the initial plan was to have them there and show them this, like right up in their face, dance, music, composers, filmmaking, lighting, photography, you name it, it's happening. A real happening. And I just triggered something you said about New York and the Renaissance there. And I don't know if you know, I danced a piece, The 100s by Twyla Tharp. And
I don't know the piece, but of course I know Twyla, of course.
Oh, it was a happening where she got dancers to learn 100 count phrases. So 100 dancers dancing an 11 count phrase all at once. And apparently everyone showed up from across everywhere in New York. Some trained dancers, some not. Cunningham showed up. He was like, let's do this. So I like that idea of a happening. And I said this, if you read the like call to action on the first one, I say this is going to be a happening. And this free class is now a happening. And that goes with social media, decentralized, collective, these words that are lots of people, not one face.
Well, you're speaking to the choir. We've gone long, but it's okay. We're going to put the whole video up and we'll see what happens. And I think what has to happen, at least what I'll offer again, which is, you get these dancers to get ready to talk about themselves, because I think it is really, you're rebuilding the community and sustaining it. You're rebuilding it because it fell apart, right? People don't understand. It's falling apart. You guys don't get it, but it is, because people can't move and people can't travel. They can't do what they would normally do to sustain their income. So we are trying to, and you are trying to speed it back up to where it was prior to the pandemic. And by having this formalized platform, to say, hey, you can come and talk about yourself as this or that, or,
Well, we might never get back to where we were before the pandemic. And that's why your listeners need to understand that those dance companies in the UK and globally that you've seen and you want to buy tickets for and support when they come back, their dancers might not be available to come back. Those dancers that are self-employed contracts, which in the UK at least is many big companies,
Mhm.
many, you name it, there's a good chance that they're not full-time and that they are on self-employed contracts that might have infinitely renewed if it wasn't an end of the world situation, but now aren't, you know, they're not called in at the moment and may not be receiving furlough.
Yeah, it's
So
a
you've
huge
got to
thing.
understand that those companies that you want to buy tickets for may not make it back if we don't
Look,
step in now.
I still stand firm that in order for the arts community, and I'm like, as I shake my finger, in order for the arts community to really sustain itself, there has to be people at every level and in every profession actually holding it up. It's not just dancers, right? And you've said this, it's not just dancers. Sometimes people feel like if they're not on stage, they don't want to have anything to do with it. And it's similar to, you know, when I organized a speaker series, and I'd asked certain people to be speakers and nobody else wanted to help put it together. And I'm like, you understand the putting of it together, in my eyes, is even better and even more useful, helpful, provides, because over a long period of time, let's just say you do this for 10 years, the impact of you doing it every single day over a long period of time, over like 10 years, that's a generation and a half, you know, of impact. People don't understand that. And then what you don't necessarily know what the terrain will be in 10 years. And it's no different than what Elon Musk is doing. So in the beginning, he probably said, I just want to do, you know, I want to make a fancy car. And now he's like, okay, I want to go to the moon, right? Because he feels like he saw something, he interacted with someone, he had a certain experience that led him to be either inspired or to give him knowledge, to give him that motivation so that he would pursue what it is that he was, you know, now able to see. And that's where people don't understand what this is about.
Yeah, and I've got, you know, you said generational. I've got people I've employed for, well, Fun Freelance Dance have employed to do these classes. I've got teachers that have taught me. I'm teaching students that I taught the students that are now professionals.
Sure.
There's the age, we've got no ageism. We've got, you name the list of isms, there's none of it. We've brought everyone on board. And, you know, right now we've got dance artists, teachers, musicians, writers, composers, stage and technical, photography and venues on board. And of course our sponsors. That could grow. We could have psychologists, dance psychology, dance science, sports science. You know, people can't underestimate how important the health and well-being teams that you can build using modern sports science practices are. Yes, football's got access to them. What about the freelance dance community? If they're not in a company, they're not got cheap access to any kind of, you know, physiotherapy, osteotherapy, chiropractor, you name it, acupuncture.
Let me ask you this question. And have you been in touch with Stephen McRae? You mentioned him before, right? That like had I tried to get him?
Or, Stephen is an inspirational figure because he's principal of Royal Ballet, but he appeared in a cartoon, not a cartoon, a manga rather. He has appeared in other media and formats, and of course, you know, everyone knows that he also in Alice in Wonderland, he's tap dancing. I like the fact that despite the fact he has the best of the best when it comes to being in the Royal Ballet Company as a principal, he still wants to do these other things. And with me, I don't know what Stephen's journey is. I don't know if that's received positively or not. But for me, in education and all the way now into professionalism, there's always an issue when you start to cross boundaries outside of your box. And Fun Freelance Dance was birthed with the idea of there's no boxes. Dance artists do lots of things, whether it's dance and style hair, dance and choreograph, dance, in Anna Watkins' case, dance and be an artistic director. I'm not having it. I'm not doing it. I'm not engaging with it. I'm sorry. Nobody has one job or one role. They're able to do many things. And I want everybody to express all of their talents. And if Fun Freelance Dance is a vehicle for that, great. But if you hear this and you have nothing to do with dance, in your industry too, if you can do lots of things, don't let anyone knock you through it. If they say stepping on toes, step on them harder.
Well, I think let's end it at this, which is, I think there are a lot of people that believe exactly what you believe, and I think the younger people below a certain age have always thought this way. I would say that people in my generation are thinking this way, but they didn't express it fully. So they understand what we're talking about, but they didn't necessarily move on it. The younger people, they don't give a damn. I think they are doing everything that they want to do. Don't care. They really do not care. It's fun to watch, but I will say this, what I'm starting to see is that now when they're starting to work, into the workplace, they are getting a little bit of that, how do you say it? They're being challenged, right? Because they're sort of being pushed into the system, and the system is telling them in so many ways, hey, we only really want you to do one thing, or you really have to pull back on, and you have to express yourself in a certain way, and you have to, so they're receiving the lessons now, but I think they still have a freedom that older people don't have. Right?
Except older generations can identify with the idea of not under my roof. And you've got to understand that the younger, just graduated dancers have been told by their parents, who they've had to stay living with because they've not achieved any kind of work. They've had to say, look, you are not going to get a job in this industry realistically. Companies aren't hiring, choreographers aren't searching, there's no freelance work. You're going to have to retrain and do something else. And that is the not under my roof policy. And this could be an issue that kids have faced. I've faced, everyone's faced the idea of like, you're not going to do this. You're not going to be a dancer. You're not going to be gay. You're not going to be this. You're not going to mix with that social group. Issues around, it doesn't matter what it is, but that not under my roof, the pressure for those younger generation dancers now is huge. And those dancers that have access to class and have said, I'm going to keep dancing no matter what, they have something now. They can say, look, I'm training with top teachers every single day. So the day that audition goes up, I'm going to get that job. And without Fun Freelance Dance, that's their last stop. After that, there's nothing.
No. I want to show to you what I saw in the Financial Times. Can you see this?
Yes.
You can see it, right? Did you see this? Has it been
yeah.
all over the UK? And it's a bed. It's all about extraordinary beds. And I'm just reading it. I just think it's funny that it's about beds. I didn't even look at what the product was. I only looked at him. I said, oh, I know that guy, right? And of course, his name. The bed was not even in my mind until I just brought it up, with you now. And that's an example of what we were talking about, which is in New York, you would see this everywhere, right? You would see this everywhere. When I'm in London, I see it going down the escalator, like boom, 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 boom. And I think because now we're in a time where we are at home, this actually has to start going online, right? The quality that you see here has to be translated onto the digital form, and that's where the opportunity is. And you and what you're doing and what I'm doing in some respect is actually pushing that forward. It was always bound to happen, but this pandemic is actually speeding this up. So we need more creative people in every avenue, technology, IT, dance, whatever, that understand how to translate this paper image onto the screen and make people that are young, that are on TikTok and this and that and YouTube, really excited to engage with people like yourself, people like me, but also more importantly, the people that are coming through and performing. So, I mean, I'll give you the last word. I will offer this, we can talk about it offline, but there's a way to move it forward. There's a way to get more people in front of people, right? And not having to tell them, hey, you need to go to the website, because they're not going to do it. To engage in such a way where they're like, what is David and Jamiel doing this time? It's got to be like that, because there's no other way that they, you understand what I'm saying, right?
Well, I'm here to tell you that congratulations, another announcement. After this interview, you are now a hashtag team member. So we're going to have a discussion about a headshot, a bio, and where on this website you fit. But you'll have a vested interest in sharing now, because you are the first person to platform this length of podcast that isn't about just me as a choreographer or what I think, but about Fun Freelance Dance as an idea. So you heard it here first, everyone.
Yeah.
David is a hashtag team member.
Look, well, thank you. Look, we're going to end the interview. We'll stay on. What I'll do is I'll stop it, and then we can talk it for longer if you need. But thank you for making this happen. I mean, hey, look, my trips to the UK you know, had to come out and end up in some way. I was just visiting and visiting and visiting. Like, why am I visiting this place? There's no outcome. And now we can see a bit of the outcome sort of taking shape in this interview, right?
Thank you so much, David.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to stop it. You guys, thank everybody for, you know, those who have watched the entire thing. Thank you. And we'll be having more interviews with people like Jamiel shortly. Take care of you. Take care. All right.